Yo, what's going on, everybody? So Boruto episode 133 is done and in the books, and I already know that there are going to be a lot of people who are feeling absolutely trolled over the fact that we had to wait 2 weeks, and after a 2-week wait, after that major cliffhanger ending where you have Jiraiya cornering Sasuke saying like, hey, wait a second, are you Sasuke Uchiha? And Sasuke gets this oh shit look on his face, and then all of a sudden roll credits. Well, this week's episode doesn't pick up right where it left off, but instead it walks us back to a few moments before that where Sasuke is encountering Sakura. Sakura picks up the note, and then you get the whole thing with Sasuke and Jiraiya. Well, this is what I love about this episode. Instead of just having this huge moment where Sasuke says everything, Jiraiya says, oh no, that would be silly. Of course not. But here's what's crazy though, right? Here's what's crazy. This is why I love Jiraiya. Even though he's putting on the full act again, Jiraiya is fully aware of the fact that, okay, this might actually be Sasuke. And when they get a chance to talk on their own in a place where they can be absolutely certain that Naruto and Boruto cannot overhear them, well, when this happens, Sasuke gets a break from Jiraiya. Jiraiya says, hey, look, man, I'm not gonna look into your details too much, but this is one of those times where I need to know everything about Urashiki. And what I love about that is in that moment, on the drop of a hat, on the flip of a switch, if you will, to use another cliche, you see full hand just how intelligent Jiraiya is, because Jiraiya understands now that he is the one who has all the leverage. Before Boruto and Sasuke, they had quite a bit of leverage because they were able to keep their identity secret, and people had to move with caution when it came to just how they interacted with them, because they knew that, okay, they say they're performers, but at the same time, these people are clearly ninja, but we don't have an idea. We don't know anything about them. Keep them under surveillance. And so they had some leverage in that sense. Jiraiya just flipped everything, and I love that. I love that. And what I personally love about that moment is the fact that Sasuke, now he's giving him information, but you can tell, like, we as the audience know that Sasuke is coming very short of telling Jiraiya, like, look, you know, this guy has the Rinnegan. He comes very short of saying that because that's information that Sasuke knows that he can't necessarily disclose to Jiraiya. So I like seeing that moment right there, how Sasuke is telling Jiraiya everything that he needs to know while still holding back some information, but giving Jiraiya everything that will satisfy his crunch for information. So I like that right there, because you see a bit of gamesmanship between Sasuke and Jiraiya. So I thought that that was really interesting. Now, I will say this, like, I like the moment where you have Boruto and Kid Naruto, they're going through and they're making amends with each other, because for whatever reason, you know, people were flipping out over the fact that you had that moment where Boruto for a second was treating Naruto just how the other villagers did, where Boruto kind of pushed him away, and people were saying, I can't understand why he would do that to his father. You gotta understand, okay, at this point, Naruto doesn't have that chakra under control. It's a raging wildfire. It isn't anything that is contained. And so for a kid like Boruto, who has never really experienced anything like that, the natural reaction is to freak out for a moment. And what I like is that you see the maturity on the hand of Boruto Uzumaki, because Boruto comes back and he comes full well with the intention of making amends with Naruto, and you see in that moment as well that Naruto has already forgiven Boruto. So I like the little father and son type thing. The only thing I will say that in that scene that I was a little disappointed in is, I might be mistaken, I'm gonna have to go back and listen to it a little closer. I tried it twice and I wasn't able to hear the difference, but you know, Boruto has his own verbal tick. Boruto's verbal tick is Dadabasa, and it's a play off of what Naruto's Dadabayo is. And Naruto, especially as a kid, that's damn near in every other sentence. So I like the fact that once again you saw the Dadabayo, but I didn't hear Boruto say Dadabasa. I am very certain that I heard him say Dadabayo, and if that's the case, that's a little small nitpick, but it's not something to just kind of write home with. If anything, that's just one of those times where you look at it and you say, okay, clearly Boruto being around Naruto has picked up on more of Naruto's mannerisms to a point where he's picked up Naruto's verbal tick. So it'll be very interesting just to see how they handle that going forward, whether or not that was a conscious decision by Boruto, or whether Boruto's verbal tick changes from Dadabasa to Dadabayo. That's gonna be interesting to see how they handle that. Now, I definitely got to talk about this because I know that a lot of people were saying, I can't wait for Boruto to learn the full truth about Sasuke. And we actually get that scene, but it doesn't come from Sasuke. It comes from Naruto himself. And what I love about this moment is the fact that, you know, you see Naruto and Boruto, they're eating. Naruto's totally getting into the meal. Like, Naruto's like, yo, this is some good ass ramen right here. And Boruto's like, hey man, I really want to know more about that Sasuke guy that you're talking about. You know, your friend was the shinobi, so why did he leave the village? Why did he leave the village if he's the Konoha shinobi? Naruto literally gets a look on his face like, this motherfucker right here. And he takes his chopsticks, he places them on the bowl, and he was like, I can't believe this shit right here. like in that moment, right? In that moment, you know, it almost came across like, you know, and I'm not advocating, you know, using any type of drugs or anything. I ain't advocating that, but it almost comes off like, you know, you got some people, you know, they got a bowl, they're smoking it, and you got that one dude who everybody got a buzz, they feeling real good, and Boruto's like, yo, I got something real serious to talk to you about. I got stage 3 herpes.
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man? Bro, I'm out, man. That nigga's tripping.
But that's the type of shit right there. It's just like, what the fuck are you talking about? Can't you see we having a good time? Like that's kind of how I took the whole thing with Boruto and Naruto. But they quickly turn it around. They quickly turn around, and I like seeing Boruto's expression, because when Naruto tells Boruto, like, look, my friend thought that being in solitude was the only way to gain power. I wasn't able to stop him. His entire clan was annihilated. He's the only last survivor of his clan, and he has to get revenge. He left and he went to go join Orochimaru, and in that moment the light switch goes off on Boruto's head. And I read a couple of comments on a few different places where people are saying, I don't understand why Boruto doesn't know about the Uchiha massacre. Shouldn't that be common knowledge? I'll say, hold on a second. When you go back to the start of the Naruto Gaiden adaptation and Boruto, so around episode 18, 19, 20, somewhere around there, you have Sarada. She's looking through all the books at that Konoha library, and when it gets to the Uchiha massacre, that's classified information. You have to be of a certain ninja rank in order to access that file. The only thing that Sarada knows is that there were Mangekyo Sharingan patterns, there was a tree with like the Uchiha clan members on there, and it says that she and Sasuke are the only known survivors. But outside of that, nobody knows that the clan was massacred and the true reason why it was massacred, and what the public reason of it was, and that Itachi went all hack-a-shack and hide the sword with everybody who was in his clan. So I like that we're seeing this right here, because you gotta understand, for Naruto grew up with the knowledge that the Uchiha clan was massacred, because that was something that was being talked about in real time. So I like seeing that moment right there. I really like seeing how Boruto's absolutely shocked, and then once he learns that it's actually Orochimaru who Sasuke went to, now all of a sudden Boruto is connecting dots, because, you know, Boruto for a moment, you know, when he found out that Orochimaru was experimenting on Mitsuki and that he had all these different Mitsuki clones, Boruto knows that Orochimaru isn't necessarily a good guy, but now he's starting to view Mitsuki's father in a different light. So I mean, I like that right there. Whether or not that's gonna be foreshadowing, I can't tell you, but I like that we are getting a little bit more information there. And what I find fascinating about the fact that they decided to go this route is now we're getting that moment where Boruto's fully understanding what it means to be a ninja like Sasuke, because now he knows what drove Sasuke when it came to the type of person that he is now. That's something that Boruto, to his credit, he did say to Sasuke, I know that whatever you did, it turned you into the person that you are now. So you saw that maturity, but at the same time, this is one of those times where you can tell certainly that Boruto's a kid, because he understands, but he didn't truly understand until he got the full context, and he wasn't ready for it. But handling it like a pro, I mean, Boruto, I'll give him his credit here. After he hears that, he just takes it in stride. That's something that he's probably gonna have a conversation with his mentor Sasuke about in a future moment. Now, when you go back to the whole Sasuke and Jiraiya moment where they're standing at the steps and they're having their conversation, you know, Sasuke reveals that, like, look, anytime he uses that jutsu, that teleportation jutsu, I can sense where he is. So that in itself lets you know that while Sasuke is out of chakra, which I know somebody's like, damn, why is it taking him several days to recover chakra. Even though he's out of chakra, you know, Sasuke, to his credit, says that if I just had a little bit more chakra, I could handle this dude. So for all the people saying, oh my god, you know, Urashiki's super powerful, Sasuke isn't near 100% of his chakra, and he's saying that like if he had a little bit more chakra, he'd be able to handle Urashiki. And so that just lets you know, like, if Sasuke got serious with this dude, Sasuke could mollywop him. And as for the whole thing of like Sasuke is still out of chakra, I'll just remind you guys one more time, because I still see people commenting in the comment section. I know there's the running joke of, oh, Sasuke's out of chakra, which those jokes are hilarious, by the way. But the other thing is you gotta remember, everyone else who's had their chakra ripped out by Urashiki has been bedridden for several days. Like, the fact that Sasuke is someone who has a much deeper chakra reserve than any of those characters is taking longer to recover, I mean, I think that makes sense. Again, it's a lot easier to replenish a 16-ounce bottle of water opposed to a 1-gallon bottle of water. That 1-gallon jug is gonna take a little bit longer in order to get the water up to the surface. Now, when it comes to the training part, you know, one thing I have seen some complaints on is, you know, people are saying, oh, it's just taking too long for them to learn this collaboration/cooperation ninjutsu. I don't understand why they're dragging this out several episodes, and I'll say I actually enjoy that part. And the reason being is that one thing that I think that a lot of Boruto fans need to come to grips with is, if Boruto learns something overnight, people absolutely bitch about it. If Boruto takes his time to learn something like this, people say, oh, it's just moving too slow. Which one do you want? Do you want Boruto struggling to learn something? That way when he actually pulls it off, it feels earned? Or do you want him to show that he's truly the grandson of Minato, and that Boruto has Minato's genius genes, and he's able to learn jutsu like this in basically a day or so? Which one do you want? Like, that's something I really think that Boruto fans need to ask themselves. But what I like about this training part is that for a minute, it feels as if Naruto's holding Boruto back simply for the fact that Naruto isn't as up on the uptick as Boruto is. That's one of the things that Naruto, especially as a kid, lacks. But at the same time, Naruto brings something to the table that Boruto doesn't have, which is Naruto has an uncanny way of thinking outside the box and finding a way to find the simplest answer to accomplish his goals. So I like that right there. Like, again, this is the same guy who realized, I can't make a Rasengan with one hand, I need to have a shadow clone in order to pull it off. So it's one of those things where nobody really thought of that, and Naruto thought of it after the fact. So I like how Naruto just draws the Konoha symbol on Boruto's hand, and they begin working together. But you also see that there's a time where Boruto is holding Naruto back, because Boruto doesn't have near the amount of chakra reserve that Naruto does. So just when Naruto feels like he's making strides, just when Naruto feels like he's finally getting somewhere, Boruto holds him back because Boruto doesn't have the chakra to keep up with them. And what I like about that right there is that it's a give and take type thing, and it really plays off of the Naruto and Boruto characters, because I personally feel like part of the reason why Boruto learns stuff as quickly is because Boruto doesn't have the luxury of having this massive chakra reserve that he can just play around with and kind of feel things out. Instead, Boruto knows he has a limited supply of chakra, and so he can't waste his chakra, which also leads to him learning jutsu a bit faster, because the amount of time that he's gonna have to actually try things out is gonna be shorter. Whereas Naruto basically has chakra to burn. And I think that part of that plays into Naruto's approach of just feeling things out, because he has that additional luxury. Some of it just comes down to the fact that, again, Boruto's someone you can just tell him the steps and he can absolutely learn it. Naruto's the type of person, he has to stumble across and do things his own way before he can fully grasp it. Again, you have different type of learners. So I thought that was cool. Now, when it came to Sakura, oh man, like, I just wanted Sakura to walk up to Boruto and lay a clean hit on this dude. Like, I was fully expecting it, and I know somebody like, oh my god, Sakura's such a bitch, why is she hitting Boruto? I know somebody would have said that, but I would have liked to have seen it for the humor reason. But you have that moment where Sakura is confronting Boruto about the note, and I like how Kakashi's name is just absolutely X'd out of that, and they couldn't actually see because the note got wet, and so it destroyed some of the note. And what I like about that moment is how Sakura just gets right in the face of Naruto and Boruto. She tells Naruto, like, look, I think you're holding something back, but my beef ain't with you, it's with this dude. And Boruto just gets to the point where he starts to piss himself. Boruto's at the point where he's starting to piss himself, and he manages to think of a way out of the situation. But you also see the difference with Kid Sakura and with Naruto, because Naruto just takes it, oh yeah, he said that this is a different Sasuke. Sakura knows this dude right here, this dude is holding something back, and she storms off, and she doesn't give away her true intentions, but she says like, look, I'm just gonna have to confront him about it. So obviously him is gonna be Sasuke. So I like that moment right there, because now you're actually seeing just how far Sakura has progressed. Because one thing that has been underrated by a lot of fans is that 12-year-old Sakura, 13-year-old Sakura, that version of the character is a lot smarter than people give credit for. And so I like seeing that right there. You got to remember that this is the same Sakura who Sasuke, on a handful of occasions in part 1, during the 1 year that they were members of Team 7 before Sasuke left the village, during that 1 year, Sasuke on a handful of occasions complimented her intelligence. So I like seeing that right there. And also like how when you have Asuma and he's feeding everybody at the barbecue place, you know, you have that moment where it just feels nostalgic. You see everybody sitting down there enjoying their food together, and Boruto's like, oh man, I can't believe Choji always had this type of an appetite. And he's looking at Naruto and Boruto, and I love what they did in this moment right here. I absolutely love it. So instead of having Boruto just think back to how the characters are in the future and saying like, oh, I can't believe they're always like this, instead the writers for this episode understand that sometimes less is more. Less is more. And what I mean about this is that sometimes if you write a book, you write a short story, instead of giving every single detail, sometimes letting the readers fill in the gaps themselves is a more pleasurable experience. And so it's the same thing when it comes to visual storytelling. Instead of breaking everything down on screen, you just drop the breadcrumbs there, and you imply that the character is feeling a certain type of way. And so when you have Naruto and Shikamaru and they're eating side by side, Shikamaru, he puts down his glass for a second, he looks at Naruto out the side of his eye and says like, look, if there's something else going on here, let me know before it becomes a drag. And Boruto just looks at him, and Naruto's laughing while this is going on. And what I love about that is how they're essentially showing that Naruto and Shikamaru, that chemistry that they have as advisors was always there. That chemistry was always there. Shikamaru has always had the best interests of Naruto at heart, even though he's had a funny way of showing it. And so I like that moment right there. I like seeing that, because you're basically seeing the future Hokage and his advisor giving him advice at the same time and trusting that he's gonna make the right decision. So I like the little small stuff you get there. Now when it comes to Urashiki showing back up in the middle of Boruto and Naruto's training, I thought that this was a nice place to end the episode. I thought it was a nice place because they did a better job this time of showing people that Urashiki has a very nasty habit of playing around with people who he deems to be weaker than himself. Because when Naruto charges forward, instead of immediately blitzing this dude and wrapping him up in that fishing hook, instead Urashiki allows him to run forward. Boruto's able to grab him, and he says, don't run head in, you're gonna get captured. And I like how for a brief moment you see the difference in Naruto and Boruto. Naruto's kind of running around like a country bumpkin when Urashiki's using all these fire style jutsu. And when you look at Boruto very early on, Boruto's leaping around with a bit more of grace to him. He isn't necessarily just scrambling like Naruto, because again, that's because Boruto's had a different set of training, the personality's different. So I like the little small touches there. I know somebody's absolutely saying, ladies and gentlemen, we got him, Boruto down. And it's simply because of the fact that you have that moment where Boruto is running and he gets electrocuted by Urashiki. And so I like that little small touch right there. I thought that was cool. I thought it was cool how Boruto's struggling to get up again. And when you see Urashiki and he's stalking Naruto, like again, Urashiki could have just blitzed this dude, but he's looking at Naruto and he's taking enjoyment in the fact that Naruto has a scared expression on his face. He sees Naruto shaking as he's backing up with the kunai in his hand, and he's just floating towards him. He's just casually stalking him. Again, Urashiki is displaying a lot of the characteristics that you see with shonen when it comes to shonen villains who have a tendency to be overconfident in their own abilities. So I like that moment right there. And what this episode showed you towards the end is that Sasuke and Jiraiya are figuring out a way to use that to their advantage, because as Urashiki's just standing over Naruto, as this is happening, Jiraiya just shows up out of nowhere, fires off his fire style flame bomb jutsu. It forces Urashiki to essentially retreat for a moment, but before he can get too far away, Sasuke's just throwing the shuriken. Urashiki fires back with lightning style chakra. Looks like it was some type of a Chidori that Sasuke used at one point, and Urashiki taunts him. He says like, look, how's it feel to be hit with your own jutsu? And one of those looked like they tagged Sasuke very briefly, but what's so crazy about that is how Jiraiya attempts to jump in and even the playing field, and you see the difference in power right away. So essentially Urashiki is looking at Jiraiya out the side of his eye, and his Rinnegan activates. Urashiki looks and he immediately activates a Rinnegan that is blue that does not have the Tomoe. So I like that scene right there. I like that scene. I like how you get that moment where Urashiki immediately teleports behind Jiraiya and stabs this dude, which, can we get a moment of silence for Jiraiya, because my man is always getting stabbed by something. Like, he's getting stabbed by pain, and now he's getting stabbed now. So I thought that that was pretty cool that, you know, you set that little throwback right there. But you get that moment where Urashiki, again, he feels Naruto coming, and when that happens, he immediately teleports out the way again. So it's looking like that might be a jutsu that's specific to that blue Rinnegan. And what's so crazy is, like, the anime added a little small touch to where you see Jiraiya's blood staining Urashiki's clothing. I thought that that was a nice touch as well. But I mean, overall, this was okay. This was okay. This for me wasn't the best episode. I'm not even gonna lie to you on that. It wasn't the best episode, but there were a few small moments and interactions that I totally loved. And like, I love how the art in this episode is, and not the animation, just the art. The art in this episode is definitely up a bit. And when it came to animation, some of the animation was a little more fluid than what we usually get in Boruto. So I thought that that was cool to kind of see that. I know there can be some nitpicking. There were some still frames that were in this episode where they basically had a still frame and the motion was just added to the frame. That way it appears as if the camera angle is changing. Other than that, I thought it was cool between the music and between what we got at the end with the fight and this whole revelation that Urashiki believes he can see the future. I'm guessing that's something like the quirk that you have in My Hero Academia, where it's like foresight, but there's some type of a limitation to it. So overall, like I said, this was an okay episode. My episode question to you guys is, what are your thoughts about Urashiki being able to switch between two different Rinnegan? And then my second episode question is, how do you feel about Boruto learning about the truth behind the Uchiha Clan massacre? How do you feel about that? How do you think that should shape his character going forward? But as always, guys, if you like anything I had to say, don't forget to comment, rate, subscribe, and share. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. Have an awesome day, guys.